I'm talking with Allan Bell, Chief Minister. Tynwald this week, a bit of a battering over preschools.
Well, it's not surprising the debate turned out the way it did. It was a controversial issue at the time. There was a lot of politics obviously being played around that time with the changes in Minister of Education. Mrs. Cannell, who at the time was one of the leading opponents of any changes to preschool education, is now the chairman of the Scrutiny Committee. So it's not surprising that the tone of the report from the Scrutiny Committee reflected Mrs. Cannell's views.
You say she's just being a thorn in your side still?
Well, it's not a thorn in the side. Mrs. Cannell is a member of Tynwald like everyone else and has the right to her viewpoint. I just raised the question, I think, during the debate about the impartiality of the chairman of what is supposed to be an objective scrutiny committee. But that's by the by. The report itself clearly highlighted weaknesses in the department's approach to the changes which were brought in. As I said, it was a very controversial issue at the time. Mr. Carron had very strong views as to what was needed. Council did its best to work with education and with Mr. Carron to deliver that. It had a faltering start, I think it's fair to say. But the information I have now from the department is that it is working a lot better. We are hoping as a council to make a further announcement over the next few weeks, which will enhance the amount of money available for supporting preschool education. And I'm confident now with the lessons that have been learned and extra funding which is likely to go in, that we will have a first-class preschool education, not play school structure in eventuality.
What's your views on the decision which way to go with the exams in the Isle of Man?
I think it's been a very interesting exercise in public participation. The department genuinely wanted to know what the public felt about it. There were three options that they could pursue. I think education in the United Kingdom, in England, has become a very hot potato. It has been very politicised, I think, with Mr. Gove as Minister. I think it's absolutely right that we ask the people what they believe to be the best way forward for their children. It's an excellent outcome, I think, that there was such a strong response. I think over 800 people responded to the consultation, and a very heavy weight of support for the new proposals. And I'm sure that gives the department confidence now to go ahead with the changes.
Yeah, when people who aren't being consulted, I'm thinking about people who might move over to the Isle of Man. They've come from the UK, their children are in a system. Is that now going to be a bit more, do we really want to go there and take our kids into something completely different?
No, I don't think so. The new exams will still help to facilitate the same pathway to universities in the United Kingdom. Scotland has a different regime now and has done for a number of years. That doesn't stop people moving to Scotland. I don't think it'll make any difference at all. I think the overall view is, though, that this new system, which will be brought in now, I'm sure, is more appropriate for the Isle of Man and will be actually more beneficial for the children than the political chopping and changing which has taken place in the United Kingdom.
Okay. As we talk, the UKIP bandwagon rolls on. We haven't got the full results, but I mean, it's clearly looking like the UK is getting very jaded with Europe. This could have massive implications for the Isle of Man?
We obviously have to wait to see what the outturn of the vote is. The early indications, though, are that there's been a big swing to UKIP, which was very much anticipated. The European elections in particular are more often than not an opportunity for protest votes against the government of the day. And that's not just in the United Kingdom, that's right across Europe. There are protest parties in pretty well every country at the moment on the same vein, anti-immigration, anti-Europe, as UKIP have. The challenge now, I think, is for the political establishment to appreciate there is great disillusionment after 5 years in particular of austerity because of the downturn in the economy, the collapse of the banking system, and unfettered immigration in some countries. There is a belief, I think, that the average man on the street is not being listened to, and I think the political establishment right across Europe needs to re-engage with the public as best we can to reassure them that we are listening and we're doing our best.
We're Protocol 3, which obviously, all that sort of thing, but what do you see? Are we better in or out of this whole thing?
At the moment, the relationship the Isle of Man has with Europe serves the Isle of Man very well. I think what we have to be very conscious of, though, isn't so much the UKIP outcome in the European elections. This was always anticipated. The next landmark to watch is actually whether or not the United Kingdom has a referendum an in or out referendum on Europe. Because if there is a radical change in the relationship between the United Kingdom and whatever size that might be at the time, and Europe, then clearly we will have to watch the situation very carefully, because we have our constitutional relationship with Europe through Protocol 3, rightly, but through the United Kingdom. We are not a sovereign power. We have to depend on, in many ways, on the UK representing us. And if that relationship changes, then it may have an impact on ours. So we have to watch the situation very carefully on a number of fronts at the moment.
I mean, from my limited knowledge of finance, the Isle of Man was quite a good ploy. I mean, not ploy. It was good to have that way into Europe.
Yeah.
It was seen as a selling point, was it not? It still is, probably.
Well, if you go back to 1973, when all this first came about, the Isle of Man did have the opportunity to go in with the United Kingdom. It was felt very strongly at the time, though, because one of the big fears in a broader Europe was a unified taxation structure. And I think the politicians of the day, and I think probably quite rightly, were concerned that if the Isle of Man went in with the United Kingdom as part of a broader Europe, we may well lose our taxation independence. And the whole success of our economy has been entirely dependent on the Isle of Man having that flexibility. So it was done for the right purposes at the time. I think we got a very good deal out of it, bearing in mind we now have free trade with the European Union. Probably the only area we would like to see improved is that free trade actually also applies to financial services. The problem was that services were not included in the 73 agreement. Probably, I would guess, because we didn't have financial services at that time, so it wasn't considered important. That is a sticking point, and certainly has been a handicap for the island. But we have to be realistic and recognise that in the present climate, where any change to the treaty needs a unanimous vote from the members, we're not likely to get any movement on that for quite some time.
I've talked to Minister Gorn just before you today. He's very frustrated about the Queenie business because,
Yes.
There's an example of how free trade isn't helping, because these fishermen can come in and plunder. I mean, that's a
Yes.
bit hard to say that, but it has basically affected
Yes.
the Queenie's stock drastically.
It's very, very unfortunate, because the Isle of Man, and under Mr Gorn's leadership in particular, has been very aggressive in promoting conservation and protecting fishing stocks, not just of Queenies. And for quite some time that seemed to work, and the Isle of Man actually has had external praise for the work we did on conservation. But we have some very aggressive neighbours in Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular, Northern Ireland especially, who seem unable to recognise the purpose behind conservation, and have frankly in many cases come in and plundered the Queenie stocks. This, though, isn't just a one-off instance. This has happened for a number of years, and the Irish Sea has lost a great deal of its whitefish stock, again through overfishing and lack of foresight, I think, on the part of many of the fishermen who, for short-term gain, are jeopardising the long-term future of the industry.
And there's nothing you can do besides, I know you close bits, but there's nothing you can do to stop them coming in.
No, there is a limit to what we can do, and we can't stop them coming in, I'm afraid. But we can only hope through powers of persuasion that ultimately common sense will prevail, and they will realise that you can only plunder something like this once, and you've lost the opportunities for a long-term future. I hope realism will hit some of them, and I'm hoping also we have a British-Irish Council meets every 6 months. I meet my counterparts in Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular.
Thumping the table coming up?
Well, it's not thumping the table. It's a good opportunity to quietly explain to them what the problems are, and hopefully get support at the highest level for a rethink from the various fishermen's associations. But fishermen are very independent individuals, and even if the senior politicians were supportive, it's another challenge, I think, to persuade the fishermen themselves to recognise it's in their long-term interest to respect conservation.